Hello, everyone. It's Cody Fry. Today we're going to look at my song Thinking About You, and I'm going to show you how I made it, basically. If you haven't heard Thinking About You yet, you can find a link to your streaming service of choice in the description of this video, or you can just put my name into like Google or whatever. But let's take a look. So this is the Logic session. This was essentially like the demo that then, some stuff got added to. So here's where that's at. So right off the bat, I just wanted to mention that I color-coded this for you guys. I never color-code anything because I'm a slob. This has the scratch vocals on it right now. Thinking about you. So this was like how the vocals sounded before I like really recorded them. Still thinking about you. But essentially the verses and the pre-choruses and stuff all came from this demo. Kind of a common refrain for me of music right now is that like a lot of times the stuff that ends up on the record is the stuff from the demo. There's just like something about the magic of like recording a demo that feels like it's not the final when it turns out that's actually going to be your best performance. And I've noticed this about myself and just other people I produce. So always record your demos in the highest quality you can because they're totally going to make it on the final. The way a lot of my songs come about is that I just kind of have like a groove or a feeling in mind that I want to make a song out of. So in this case, I just like realized that I don't really have any 16th shuffle songs in my catalog. And I was like, I love 16th shuffle. So let's just make one. And I was listening to this guy Anomaly a lot. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. And if you haven't checked out Anomaly, stuff is ridiculous. He's an unbelievable producer and piano player. Basically, the first thing that happened was I put the basic groove down, which sounded like this. This is the 808 kit, basically. That's how the drums sounded when I was kind of making this demo. And I think the first thing basically that happened was I wanted to make this kind of like wah synth sound. Let's pop over to a different session for a second. I wanted to just show you kind of how I made the main synth, essentially. To do that, I just wanted to give you a quick explainer of how synths, a basic function of a synth. So here is just like a saw wave. You can see it represented here in real time, on this, whatever, Logic EQ. And all synths have a function called cutoff. It's usually called cutoff. Sometimes it's called something else. And essentially what that does is this. So you can see I'm basically just limiting the amount of higher frequencies. And so the lower the cutoff, the less of the sound you hear because you're taking away some of the higher frequencies. And with cutoff, there's also something called resonance usually. And what that looks like is this. So in addition to cutting the high frequencies, you also get this sort of bump as the cutoff moves that kind of accentuates the frequencies right before the cutoff. So that is what gives you this sort of like wah thing. See, if it's stationary, it kind of has like telephone kind of vibe, but when you start moving it, that's when you get that kind of wah effect because you get that bump here, and as you move it, the high frequencies are being accentuated as you go upwards in the cutoff. And this is the synth that I used to create the main sound. This is the Prophet by Arturia. I'm sure you guys have heard of Arturia. They have cool like analog models of synths basically. And you can see here, there's the cutoff and there's the resonance. And when I play it, it has that sort of wah thing. And the reason is, you can hear as I lift the cutoff, you can hear how that like resonance creates that wah. And the reason is because the attack of the filter is longer than the attack of the note. So as if you move this attack back, it just becomes a different sound. And as you put it back in its position, it gives you that nice wah. It gives you that nice sort of like wah sort of thing. So let's just go down the line. I've gotten several questions about the yep at the very beginning. That is just this here.
Yep.
And all that is just my voice with the Logic pitch thing on it. So if I take that off of both, they're panned left, right. So if I take that off of both yeps,
Yep.
that's just me.
Yep.
Put that on.
Yep.
Yep. It's like the Justin Timberlake sexy back thing, but like the Alvin and the Chipmunks version of that.
Yep.
And because I am me, I, have to have like strings and orchestra and everything. So this demo obviously doesn't have the real strings on it yet. You can kind of hear how they sound. And then we have like some flute kind of stuff here. And the winds we never actually recorded. These are just Spitfire symphonic woodwinds, staccato. Never actually recorded them, just used the samples. So here's the keys. I've gotten a lot of questions about the piano sound. The piano sound is literally just Keyscape by Spectrasonics. And it's literally just like the first patch you open. I did not change anything about it. There's no plugins on it. It's literally just Keyscape. Another thing I wanted to do with this song was try to introduce more like chromaticism into like a pop context. I have, more lyrical kind of flowy songs that have chromaticism in it, but I was like, how do I take that into the pop context without making it so kind of heady? So if you take the pre-chorus, like the bass line is just that. Could have just been like a, could have been that, and that probably would have been fine, but I just thought, what if we could push it further? So I'm trying to find some like interior chromatic motion, and so instead what you get is, so you get that sort of, which doesn't work, but somehow just feels right in the context. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. And it's actually played with this sound. Which is an MKS E piano from Keyscape also. So I was just trying to figure out like more ways to put chromaticism in it. And the same thing happens with the main wah synth, right? So the simplified version would just be like, right? So you get that. But instead, I just thought, what about, so you get that sort of like half diminished thing in there, which is just kind of twists your ear a little bit and is like maybe a little bit unexpected, but cool, I think. Maybe you think it's lame, but this is my song, so I get to do what I want. And then the other thing about this song that I thought was so strange for me was that I wrote the bass line first, the bum, 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 bum. So the chords are essentially just, D flat major 9. It's like an implied F minor, but the bass lands on a B flat, which shouldn't work, but somehow it does. Maybe some theory nerd out there can explain why this feels so great to me, because it's just like, you're getting that like, that's where you're landing, but the bass lands on the B flat and kind of like, you get that sort of like F minor outline, but it never quite just lands on F minor. And I don't know really why it works, but it felt good to me, so I just left it. I'm sure there's an explanation for why it works, but sometimes when you're in the demo process, I try not to think too much about like, why does this feel right? And instead just like keep going into that feeling. So the slowdown section, which is the third pre-chorus where everything goes into halftime. So there's, you can do these slowdowns in Logic where you just select slowdown, and there's that. But the way we got the drum sounds is kind of a cool trick. So Logic has this function called vary speed, which if you put it on speed and pitch, it's essentially like you're just slowing down a tape machine or something. And so everything goes. So we took the drum sounds and just basically vary speeded them into halftime. So it kind of has this like messed up tape quality. And we did the same thing with the strings. We actually had them play up in the highest octave they could and then slowed it down half speed. So it has this weird sort of like, they're playing in a regular range, but it has this weird kind of like, I don't know, vibration about it because it was actually played super high and kind of out of tune. But when you slow it down, it gives that sort of like wrecked tape feel. So here we are in the Pro Tools session. So this would have been basically exactly as I sent it to the mixing engineer. So you'll kind of get to hear where that's at before I send it. We got the real strings added in here. They sound very cool. Here we have all the final vocals. And kind of something weird that I did on this track is I used a plugin called Little Alter Boy, which is just like a Sound Toys plugin from their bundle. So you can hear that I'm still thinking about you. So those are just like the regular voice, but then you add these things that are called the alters. I'm still thinking about you. And what they are is essentially, it's sort of like a vocoder sound. Thinking about you. And the way you make that is essentially it's just like a pitch shifter. So, here's with nothing, it's not doing anything right now. I got a tendency to move too fast, even when I know. But if I move the pitch up, I got a tendency to move too fast, even when I know I'm walking on glass. So it does all that cool stuff. But I think what maybe a lot of people don't know about it is that you can put it in this robot mode. And then essentially what it does is it just tunes it to a single note. So I got a tendency to move too fast, even when I know I'm walking on glass. So it just takes your performance and just makes it a single note, and you can change the note. I got a tendency to move too fast, even when I know I'm walking on glass. So you can like move the performance around. And essentially what I do is I created the harmonies out of the lead vocal by using this robot mode, and it gives you that sort of like weird kind of vocoder-esque sound. Thinking about you. You can hear they kind of have like a weird sort of thinking about you robot quality, but it's not like synthetic sounding as much as a vocoder would be, which is what I liked about that. One of my favorite things to do is, like stuff that has reverb on it, like strings and stuff. I'll bring it in and clip the reverb when I don't want it. So like, for example, in the intro, so you still get the fullness of the reverb, but when you go in Pro Tools and kind of like print the reverb and then delete it where you don't want it, it gives it that sort of like tightness of like and immediacy, so the reverb isn't bleeding into other things. And like you see, on the vocals, literally like it's just EQ and compression. Nothing really has any reverb on it. Yeah, a few of the harmonies have a bit of verb on it. And I think, on this track, I used Echo Boy on the double wide setting to give the lead vocal a little bit of like breadth and wideness without adding reverb. I did add just a touch of gated verb. Out here just floating around. So that's with nothing. Out here just floating around. And then with the effects. Out here just floating around. So you can see it's really subtle, but it does kind of give it that like kind of sizzly, I don't know, pop quality. So Kevin McIntyre played bass on this and Steve Gould played drums, and the pocket is just really nice. And that's just straight from Kevin and Steve. You know, look, you can see on the drums, there's literally nothing. There's no plugins. This is just how they sounded when Steve sent them to me. I sampled a kick because I just liked the way it sounded. Hats, snare top. Actually, all the other mics are muted in my mix now that I'm looking at it. I don't know what the mixing engineer actually used or not, but I just thought, man, it sounds great. I'm just not even going to mess with it. So a weird thing is like what I was talking about with demo magic, you'll see that there's a CF bass and a Kev bass. I played bass on the demo and then I had Kevin play on the whole song. But and Kevin crushed the whole tune. But there was like some sort of demo magic on the chorus. And so the choruses are actually my bass because there was just like something about it that like, I don't know, it was like I was really excited while I was playing it and there was like that sort of like demo magic, and so I just left it. And you can hear the tone is kind of different from Kevin's, but in a mix, you never notice it. And that's really it. I mean, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. You can, write in the comments or comment on Instagram or whatever. But I just thought it might be neat to take you under the hood of what it took to make Thinking About You. Hope you liked it. Yeah.